with this, getting the productivity reporting down to as finer increment as possible, which would be weekly.
Also, then you don't necessarily have to depend on when you're going to get financial reports out exactly. When you're monitoring the productivity using a lot of these tools we gave you, it puts a lot of the power back in the hands of the directors and the clinicians, because though you may not know the actual collection rates or the amount of revenue, you know whether you're making your targets as far as what you should be producing. So.
Okay, so I think monthly monitoring, I think we've been through, I've actually talked my way through this, I think, in terms of monthly monitoring means that we're, okay, so we're going to be showing you some tools that talk about monthly monitoring, which I think for agencies that yet to get their head around CPT codes and have no available information are going to be very useful. But the weekly monitoring is really where the key to success is, because you've got data that's actionable. It allows clinic directors to identify trajectories early on, and as Scott said, it enables you to get ahead of the financial reports. Financial reports are always going to be a few weeks behind the game, but productivity is so correlated with financial information that if you know that on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, you're going to know what the financial reports are going to tell you before they arrive.
I think it's important to have everybody believe in the numbers, and if you hold your directors and the clinicians accountable to productivity, you can sort out the revenue, billing, and collection later. But it's important for them to see when they're making the number or not making the number how close they're coming.
Okay, so keep.
So again, keeping the conversation going. Communicating weekly tracking is really critical to keeping your clinicians on track with it. I try to send out productivity reports on a weekly basis here, and the directors also communicate and share these with all of the staff. I think it's very important to keep it as an ongoing part of supervision, not just for managers and your management team, but also for your managers to share with their staff on a weekly basis as well, so that things can be corrected. It's better to identify problems earlier on than to wait until it's become too much of a problem to be able to deal with, and it becomes just a part of the way the clinic does business. I think weekly monitor. Oh, you've already.
Yeah, cross that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's different, as far as transparency, I've always shared the information with the directors who also share it with all of their staff. We run several programs at ICL. I also send it out when I send it out to senior management as well as managers. I've also taken the productivity reports that have all programs on them and met with staff in clinicians in staff meetings and shared it between different programs so that they can see it. There's different schools of thoughts on what is the best way to share information. Some people feel that it's better to be more transparent. Some people don't want to embarrass other people in meetings. I think that it's really an agency by agency standard. I think that it's important that it be shared because everybody should know how people are doing, who's producing well, who's producing lower, and a lot of that can be resolved. There's also that extra benefit of peer pressure and being with C, who is performing very well, and I often acknowledge them in emails and other means and tried to recognize them.
This is me.
Oh.
So let's look at the tools then. We're going to show you the baseline productivity tool, which we reviewed in the module 6, which is about looking at the different CPT weightings. We've got a monthly productivity tool, and we have the gold standard weekly productivity tool, and these will be posted on our website by next Wednesday. So let's jump into these now and have a look at them. The
first one is the baseline productivity. sorry, yeah, it's a baseline productivity tool. And this one really helps you look at your staff's time and rated CPTs in your service mix. And it can help you project, based on your benchmark, what mix of services a clinician has to provide in order to get to whatever that magic number is that your agency has established. So if we could take a look at the productivity tool. And as you can see up in the top, which Chris already went over, is the paid time off in days, whether it's holiday sick, personal vacation, adds up. All of the fields in yellow in this tool are input areas where you can actually put in the number that is specific to your agency. Under standard time to the right of that is the standard work week in hours. I feel it's a 40-hour work week. And under that is the percent of paid time off, which is from the columns to the left, which is 15%. And you come out to a billed hours to paid hours of 58%. And then you can see that it will estimate the number of CPTs right here, which is 1206. As you scroll down, you can see, under the service percentage, you can change these numbers in order to project the number of contacts that you need on the far right side. It will also tell you your CPT weighted units. So if we know that our number is 1206, and we calculate it 100%, and we make this mix whatever the actual mix is that clinicians are doing, whether between 45-minute sessions and half-hour sessions and intakes, it will project out to the 1206, which is 100%. You can also go over that if you want to. Of course, it's not really any point to that. The point is to stay at 100% and figure out what the service mix is you need in order to accomplish your 1260. And then from there, you can see it also will project not only the annual number, the 1206, but it'll also break it out by the estimated contacts that you would need per week and per day. And again, it will also show you the actual contacts if you look. So if it's 520 CPTs for 30-minute sessions, that actually equals 838 half-hour sessions, and same with 45-minute sessions. So it's basically calculating the number of actual contacts it takes to make up the number of CPT units.
So again, a useful, sorry if you've not said this already, Scott, but a useful tool to show clinicians that the balance of doing 30-minute, 45-minute sessions, how much work's involved in taking those different approaches.
Well, for psychiatrists, it would be a very different service mix, obviously. Also figuring out what it takes to reach their benchmark.
So a tool to work with staff to show how their service mix plays into that 1206 CPT codes. The 1206 is the thing that remains constant from your benchmarking tool. Okay. So the next tool is the monthly productivity tool. So if you're at this may be an entry tool into getting more useful data. If you've trouble getting weekly productivity data, this will give you a monthly overview. It doesn't require that you really already know or have the CPTs at your fingertips, because it will convert those for you, and it will also give you a high-level overview of the monthly status of your clinic. So if you just want to go to that now, Justine. Okay. So let's just shrink it down so we can see it a little bit better.
So again, all of the yellow areas are inputs that can be changed to reflect what is actually happening within your agency. The first one would be your work week. What is the standard work week for you, whether it's 35, 37 and a half, or a 40-hour work week? Here. And the number of business days that happen to be in that month. In this case, we're in January right now. Let me just click this so you can see. And each one of these would be one of the clinicians within your program. And you can see to the left all of the service categories, CPT service categories are listed. So if you just know the contacts, which you would put in these yellow areas, it will calculate the actual weighted CPTs. And then it will add them all down and give you totals at the bottom for the month for each clinician.
Column F, if you could expand column F.
Yeah. So column F, the yellow inputs on each one would be where you would put the number of contacts. So as you can see, for Allegra, in that month, Allegra did 10 contacts, 10 initials, and that calculates out to the 12.5 CPT. And then it adds down to a total at the bottom. And then I believe you have a total here as well for the entire program. So this can be very helpful, like Chris said. If you don't have easy access to knowing your CPT weights, you can just really know the number of contacts, plug them in per clinician, per psychiatrist, whoever the billable staff person is, and come up with a total at the bottom of where you're going and what you need to make your benchmark.
So this is again, it's a fairly straightforward way of saying I did 10 of these type of contacts, 5 of these type of contacts in a month. It also enables you to see how you're doing year to date as this adds up. What it doesn't give you is again this data will always be 4 or 5 weeks behind the curve because simply because you're looking on a monthly basis, and any data that you put in here is old data in effect, and therefore it is harder to react to. Although it does give you a fairly simple and straightforward way of plugging in individual sessions and for the whole weighted CPTs to be added up and calculated for you. It's actually a lot more simple than it looks to use, and I really encourage for those of you that didn't want to jump into the deep end of weekly monitoring to look at this and use it. It can be a very effective tool for looking at services on a monthly basis. So let's go back to our slides, and then we look at weekly. The weekly productivity tool means that you already understand the concept of the CPT codes, and you can produce, you can input into a spreadsheet CPT code rather than visits or hours. It tracks week by week and keeps, as we've been saying, the clinicians accountable. What it actually does is take each week and adds it to the following week. So you can see how, in much more real time, how year-to-date progress is being made. The important thing about this tool, as you begin to look at it, is that what it enables you to do is see where a clinician may be falling behind in terms of their, we're just waiting for it to come up. We've got a few tools open. We're just trying to bring the right one up. Nope, wrong one again. Okay, so while we bring this up, so the critical part about this for me in terms of wanting this tool to be created was that we weren't seeing productivity on a week-by-week basis and not a year-to-date. I think it's far too easy to fall into the trap of saying to somebody, for last month or last week, you nearly hit your productivity without seeing the aggregated effect of not hitting productivity over a year basis. Somebody only needs to be off by a couple of hours a week over 40 weeks to be 80 hours worth of service down, which you can multiply 80 times $150 an hour. It soon becomes a very large number. And the key to following productivity on a weekly basis is that when you begin to fall behind, you can catch it quickly. And when you catch productivity falling behind quickly, bringing people back to the standard they need to do is much less of an issue than waiting for 3 months, finding out somebody's 20 or 30 hours behind, and figuring out how to, over the space of a few months that are left, how to catch up. Doing that on a weekly basis, and what this shows you is it's much easier to say you missed the first 5 weeks by 2 hours. How do you intend to bring back to goal by adding those 2 hours on over the next few weeks? Is a much easier thing to do. You don't get into the process of this feeling like it's an albatross around somebody's neck, and they're able to see and plan themselves to bring themselves back to goal if you catch it quick enough, which is where we're at with this weekly monitoring. Scott's going to show you how to use this one now.
So I'm just going to walk everybody through this tool. Again, this is the weekly productivity tool, and you would really need to know and be able to calculate your CPTs on a weekly basis per clinician in order to use this tool effectively. Again, at the top, very top of it is the date range, whatever week you're starting. When this form is available, it will be available so that you can start week 1 whenever your fiscal year starts. In this case, this one is set to a January, so this is the first week of January, as you can see, and that would be week 1. The available work weeks, this is the number of weeks that you're calculating for your clinicians, taking into account vacation, sick time, all of that. So in this case, it's 48 out of 52 weeks. Again, on the bottom, you see we're in week 1 of 52 weeks that scroll along the bottom here, and all of these feed one into the other. There's also an instruction tab also to the left of that. So this is really divided up into 3 main areas as we see what we have in our clinics. Salaried clinicians, which are people who are part-time or full-time. Fee-for-service clinicians, who are paid based on a rate or on visit, and then also psychiatry, which is calculated differently. The first tab here is the productivity standard. This is whatever we've decided that they need to generate in CPTs, their billable hours. So as you can see, for salaried clinicians, it's set at 67%, meaning that 67% of their time, their total time out of a 40-hour work week would need to be engaged in a billable activity. For fee-for-service, we expect 100% of their time to be committed to billable activity, at least 100% of whatever the time is that we put in this work week. And for psychiatry, you'll notice it's 150% of productivity, and that is because the weights associated with psychiatry tend to be a lot higher. A 15-minute visit for medication monitoring is worth 0.66. So we've averaged it out at about a 1.5 CPT unit per hour, which is about 150%. It can be a little bit confusing to understand. So as you can see, we put in some data here. The second column is the work week in hours. It's the actual work week, actual hours they did that week. So you could adjust this if clinician takes off time, is out sick, or there's a holiday. The next column is the weekly target, the weighted CPT unit. This is calculated, as you can see, from the 67%. So 67% of 40 is 27 hours need to be in a CPT-generated activity. The weighted CPT units achieved, that's the actual. This is an input field again. Any of the yellow are places where you input data. And you can see 26 there for Sandra, the first clinician, which is she's at 97% for that week. which means she is 1 CPT behind in that week. It will also project out the annual target right after that. The annual weighted, all of this would automatically calculate as you enter in each week, tab by tab by tab along the bottom. And you can see the annual target based on 67% productivity is 1286. The year-to-date, what she's done so far in that week is target was 27, again 26. These would change as you keep filling out tabs along the bottom week by week. And then finally, the last part is the actual weekly visits, because it's another thing I know a lot of programs are looking at is no-show rates and how much are clinicians scheduling up in order to make their productivity. And if you can see that if somebody is scheduling high and a lot of people are keeping their visits and they have a high show rate, then they're good. It also will show you whether they're just not scheduling enough. You can adjust if somebody happens to have more difficult clients, maybe they have people who are harder to engage, they may have to schedule more visits in order to make their inputs. And again, this one also goes into year-to-date, so you can see no-show rates and visits kept for the entire year. Actually, this is not no-show, this would be show rates, how many people kept their visits.
Have you filled tab 2 out? Or did you fill tab 2 out? JA2. Did you do the next week?
No.
Oh, okay. So the critical thing there again is this. You can see the year-to-date surplus or shortfall for week 1 is -1. This person does the same. Same in week 2, misses by 1. The year-to-date will now be -2. Catching that so early with a tool like this means that that's something that that clinician and the supervisor manager is easily able to address. You can imagine if this was a quarterly report, that -1 by the end of a quarterly report would be 12, 14, 16 hours behind. Much harder to tackle, psychologically very difficult, and I think for most of us, almost impossible to begin to think about catching up. This catches it early. It tracks week by week how people are doing, and it's a tool that, as Scott was saying, could be shared with all the staff. I wouldn't be averse to something like this being available for all staff, so everybody could see how their peers are doing. As we said earlier on, most people know whether somebody is productive or not. They know who the people in the agents in their clinics are, the ones who are overproducing or underproducing. And if you're able to have this information available, this will keep you up to date, on track, and able to make plans of corrections for individual staff.
I think it's also important, the very bottom, as a director or a manager, you will be able to see what is the target overall for your based on your entire clinic and where you're hitting and how far you are behind each each week, to know how you need to manage. It also will tell you what areas you might be doing better or worse in. I find from my own experience, it's very hard to keep the fee-for-service necessarily at 100% productivity. So that, and also psychiatry has its own challenges as well. So it lets you know where you need to focus your energy, and it also tells you who the stars are on your team, who's really performing or overperforming. So very useful. So
let me just say about the fee-for-service and the 100%, in case that's unclear. The reason that's set at 100% is fee-for-service staff are only paid, at least in our agency, are only paid for by the hour by weighted CPT codes. So if somebody produces an hour worth of CPT codes, then we pay for that hour. We don't pay for any time spent by that clinician in unproductive service. So essentially the productivity is 100%. The amount of hours they do is the amount of hours that they committed to do to the agency or the clinic, and the amount that they actually do is the difference between what they said they would try and do and what we actually paid for.
Well, we do pay them for supervision staff meeting, but that would not be included in this.
Okay. So again, this tool may look daunting, but is in effect, if you've got the CPT weight of information available, is very simple to use and is amazingly effective in keeping you up to date with understanding the productivity throughout the clinic. I'd only add that.
Scott, just a quick question that had come in was who actually for like the weekly productivity fills out the form?
Well, right now, I am the one who fills out this form for my clinic clinic directors, but we're in the process of really moving this toward having the clinic directors actually complete this. We have access to the CPT codes through our clinical health record, electronic health record. So yeah, this could be a clinic director task to be done on a weekly basis and used to monitor how they're doing.
Okay, so you pull the codes, you pull the service from your EHR and then plug it into here. So that also speaks to the need to do collaborative documentation too.
But they also check it, so it's not
okay.
that my directors have access to the same information, and if I get something wrong, I can get called out on it. Their office managers also check it because they're keeping track of it in order to see in order to pay clinicians or to pay out incentives or whatever else. So there's multiple checks and balances when it's open to everybody.
Okay, but it also speaks to the need to have staff be documenting immediately after their sessions, or else they're not going to be getting credit on something like
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that is an interesting point you make, is that documenting on productivity on a weekly basis really will encourage everybody to keep up with documentation and billing, because otherwise you're not getting credit for it. If you do it on a quarterly basis, things can slip for weeks, and we're not going to know about that until we do the productivity reports on a monthly or quarterly basis. So this really keeps people up to speed on documentation and billing as well.
That's a real compliance issue as well.
Yeah.
Great.
So I was just, as you were asking that question, I was just pointing out that thinking about how far somebody, it's important to think about at what point do you begin to take action. At what point is somebody so far behind in terms of the productivity that you need to begin to think about progressive disciplinary action. This is no point putting this in place if somebody slips behind 10, keeps on slipping behind week after week after week, or has slipped behind and doesn't make up the difference. That's what I was saying about before you implement this. I think it's important to think about where are your cutoff points in terms of taking action, because this is going to be very clear, it's going to be very transparent, and if you don't have the follow-through, then people are not going to believe in the numbers, they're not going to believe in this is serious. So the unfortunate or the fortunate, depending on how you feel about this, consequence of having such detailed information is it does force you to take action, or it becomes a meaningless tool.
I think that another point is just to understand what expectations are too. I think that I've had to go back again and really explain this, that the minimum standard is really to be at 100%, because at 100% you're at 67% of your time in billable activity. I think people, directors, supervisors, anybody who's gone to school sees, 85%, 90%, 95%, they think that is good. And yes, it might be better, and it may be trending up, and people may be doing better, but really the standard is to really be at 100%, which is the minimal as far as productivity standard, especially for your salaried clinician.
Okay. I think we'll hand it back to you, Andy, to wrap up, and I hope we've been clear and helpful in talking about the need for a tool that helps you hold people accountable as close as possible to the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Scott, if you could just pass the baton back to me, that would be great. All right, so we have a couple polling questions, and then we're going to wrap up. So the first polling question is, did you learn any strategies you think you can use going forward? Yes, some, neutral, no, not really. And then the second polling question is, which of these tools introduced today do you plan to use? The staff productivity slides, the baseline productivity, the monthly productivity, or the weekly productivity? So if you just take a second to answer those questions, and then we'll see what folks said, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay. And Av, it looks like you shut it down, so we'll just see what people had to say in 1 second, and we'll go from there. All right. The polling, we really do need to get some polling music, because it does take it a long time to score this thing. Okay, so it looks like 51% of people said yes, and another 20% of people said some, so that's good. Looks like the weekly productivity was the most frequently cited item for people to use, which I think makes a lot of sense. And so we hope folks take advantage of that. Just a couple fall items to come up to. We're going to be doing two basic things in the fall. One, a global webinar series on kind of what is the future hold for Article 31 clinics, particularly focused on healthcare reform, transition to managed care, those kinds of issues. Those will be open to everybody around the state, not any particular project, and no application or anything like that. It's a normal web-based training series. And then we'll be starting our new kind of big fall initiative, which will be called the Change Action and Resource Exchange, or the CARE Network. Agencies are going to be completing a self-assessment process. We're going to be providing content expertise and facilitating the structure. Agencies are going to be grouped together based on their interests, and we'll be getting that based on a letter of intent, and then we're going to focus on a bunch of different practice areas, including total compensation, work week, direct care costs, productivity, and revenue maximization. So we'll be breaking folks up into those sections based on their interest, and you'll have an opportunity over the course of the year to cycle through as many of those issues as you want to. So please stay attentive to notices from CTAC on how that's going to roll out, and dates and all those kinds of things. It'll be launching in early October, but there'll be information before then. So the tools will be available on Wednesday on our website, the tools discussed today. We had a little problem with the recording, so we only got half of it today. So we apologize for the technical details. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. And we look forward to sending out a bunch of emails on the fall initiative. We are still collecting data for the CTAC for the BEAM initiative if you want to turn in your data no later than August 30th, and then we'll update our data book and send that out to folks who submitted it. So with that, we will let you go and enjoy what seems, at least in New York City, to be a beautiful day outside. So I hope all is well, and we look forward to speaking soon. Take care. Bye-bye.